Welcome to the Josh and Marc show.
Didn't know I was going to do that, did you? Chinese spy balloons. Can't live with
Yeah, tell
them.
me.
Can't live without them.
I
What
think
is-
we can live with them, right? For at least most of the trip, anyway.
So I
I
originally...
don't know anything about it.
Okay,
So,
so I originally heard, and I thought this was the case, that there was a Chinese... there was a balloon of Chinese origin, a oriental balloon
isn't that every balloon?
that came through Canadian airspace and then entered the U.S. around Montana. I thought that it got shot down in Billings, Montana, because something popped up in my feed on Twitter of someone recording like an explosion over Billings, Montana, and then there was a lot of, talk on Twitter about this spy balloon in Billings, Montana. Now, a lot of people are saying it's a surveillance balloon, and I don't know much about surveillance
China
balloons.
was saying that, weren't they?
China was saying it was a weather balloon, and a lot of people online. So the narrative, best I can process it, is that if you are a left-leaning individual, this was just a weather balloon and nothing to worry about. but if you currently own a firearm, if you've ever owned a firearm in the past, or if you intend to own a firearm in the future, this was 100% a Chinese spy balloon sent to pinpoint the exact locations of every nuclear missile silo in the United States. So I thought it got shot down over Montana, but apparently that's not the case. I think it made its way, and this is all hearsay. This is what people have told me. I do not know the validity of this whatsoever, but I think it made its way all the way across the country and then got shot down over some body of water in South Carolina. I don't know if that's true. I think that's true. And then
So how does that? Why is that a thing? Like, how does a balloon go the whole way? That's most of the way across the U.S., right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how does that happen?
I don't know.
How do we let that happen?
s-
How does what?
So one argument is that I suppose that it's just a weather balloon and they lost control of it. So I believe weather balloons or surveillance balloons, if there is such a thing.
Uncontrollably taking pictures out of control over the U.S.
Chat GPT was in charge of this balloon. The it was the first Chinese spy balloon to use Tesla's autopilot software. I think one thought process is that it was a weather balloon, and weather balloons you can navigate them. I don't know how. They don't have like a means of propulsion, but maybe by manipulating what are those called on a plane?
Like a ballast or a baffle.
Something that manipulates the flow of air around the aircraft. So whatever.
Yeah, I think like a baffle or something. Yeah.
I think someone's on the back of my boat. So you can navigate these balloons via some means like that. I think the argument from some people is that it was a weather balloon. They lost control of it. I think that's what the Chinese government has said. Like, it's just a weather balloon. It's nothing to worry about. I can't imagine why they would come out and say anything else publicly, right? It's like, of course you say it's a weather balloon and it's nothing to worry about. There's people saying that it's absolutely a surveillance balloon, and it has means like you can navigate it electronically, and people are saying that it was being controlled and it was following this path through the United States
By Canadians.
Yeah, there was another one, I think, somewhere in Latin America, and they shot it down over water, a body of water, I think, in South Carolina, and so a lot of people were disgruntled with that, because obviously if it falls into the water, I guess you're unable to retrieve the
Verify any
Yeah.
information that may.
Yep.
Yeah, weird.
So, but the
Still
argument,
didn't find any plane parts from that 9/11 crash. did we?
right,
Yeah.
right. But the argument for doing that is that if you shoot it down over a more populated area, you run the risk of debris falling and killing people or destroying personal
Or
property, things like that.
More people knowing the story. Yeah.
Or you run the risk of them not being able to collect all of the information they were trying to collect in the first place, and we don't want to.
So that second balloon also came from South America and was also shot down in South Carolina?
I don't know anything about the.
So what the hell is South Carolina doing?
I don't know, man.
There's like it's like the person running for governor in South Carolina is out there with a revolver and he's like, I am willing to defend this state, man.
I don't know. I've not
Voting for that, dude.
seen anything of substance about this. Now, with that being said, I also haven't gone out looking for the cold hard facts because I have a feeling that no matter how hard I look, I'm not gonna get to the truth of it. But
Satire is the only answer.
yeah, we've got Chinese balloons, whether they're weather balloons or spy balloons. It doesn't seem like it should matter, right? Like, you see it, you shoot it down immediately, like the moment it enters American airspace, right?
I mean, I would think so. And then, well, the next question, and I'm playing devil's advocate, right? James A. Caster. Did you lead by saying you were playing devil's advocate? Yeah. If, let's say it was a very highly specialized weather surveillance balloon from China that just got out of control, like you do, and it then we just shoot it down without asking questions. Do you think there's any kind of like negotiating like problems with that? Any kind of, say, I don't know what current ongoing negotiations we may have with China, but do you think that affects that, where it's like it was legit, it was a weather balloon, got out, like, do you think that's worth talking about? Is that a risk or no?
Well, what's the alternative, right? Like, they've lost control of it. Do you just
That's what the guy running for governor in South Carolina is shouting when he's shooting. What's the alternative?
Do you have a better plan? I didn't think so. I'll give you my Monster Energy drink and my shotgun. He's literally at the top of a fire truck ladder, like as high as he could get on like the fourth deck of the local mall's like parking structure. Can you get me any closer? Just pointing his buckshot at a balloon that's 60,000 feet in the air. I don't know. What's the alternative? You just let it go and hope that eventually they regain control of it?
Let North Carolina handle it?
I think if there's
I don't know which.
If it's not already pretty well established in I don't know, whatever doctrine governs American foreign affairs when it comes to airspace, like seems like a good idea to just make it known to the world that if anything of yours enters our airspace without our permission, we reserve the right to shoot it down suspiciously over a body of water in South Carolina.
I feel like that's probably, whoever that guy is, that's probably his philosophy, regardless of what the POTUS says.
Dude, you know that guy is going to get reelected. Whoever was in charge of carrying out that operation in the South Carolina space, you know that there were a billion hillbillies out there that day with their binoculars staring at the sun, going blind because they wanted to see this Chinese spy balloon get shot the truck out of the sky.
Yeah. One thing too that you caught my attention when you said that, the story, now it's a story, right? Everything's a story. The story, to us, it's a story. It's an event that may or may not have happened, but now it's a story about the Chinese spy balloon. The undoubtedly, you ever notice when some people talk about it, they say, well, undoubtedly, that's what happened. There is no refutation. It clearly happened. It's like, what's the quote? Like, the truth needs no defense. I feel like people who do that, like they defend what happened. It's like, why are you defending this? Either it happened or it didn't happen. But I don't know. I feel, because I've seen some of those posts. Undoubtedly, it's this. It's like, what? What are you talking about? Undoubtedly.
I'm going to pause
Either
you.
happened or didn't.
I agree with you. I'm going to pause you.
Someone's on your boat.
I'm almost certain someone's on the back of my boat. So I'm going to let you carry some conversation here for about the next 15 seconds. I'll be right back.
All right, cool. I'll carry it. Yeah, I just think that is wild that people think in those terms of there is, and I guess that's pretty natural, right? Like, there's the other, and you're talking to the other, and so when you go onto social media, you're addressing the other people, not your immediate friends, your immediate family, typically, and that's a natural thing to want to say to prove your point off the bat. But yeah, I don't think that that's necessary. I don't think it's necessary at all to do that. Like, to defend your position off the bat just doesn't, that seems like Smith, right? Like, his posts, I think they're charged with that kind of thing where it's this defensive nature right off the bat. Like, no one's arguing with you. You're just saying something. Say it. Nope. We're gonna take up a defensive posture here. Like,
Dog, who are you talking to?
yeah, you heard me.
Apparently, it's just so windy that it feels like there's people jumping around on the back of the boat right now. So don't mind me.
I'm not gonna let you know if I see someone walk in from that backside.
Please don't, because I'll see them. But you will get to see my freaking McMap break some
Probably
other trucker in
staged.
half. It's gonna look like
Staged. Watch it be Smith. Watch him be down there for some reason, and you're rail. Oh man, yeah, that'd be bad. He's good. He's a physically very good fighter.
I don't know where he stands anymore. He's had a series. I don't know anything about anything, actually, when it comes to him. He's had some intense surgeries. I think he might have a colonoscopy bag on him. I don't know. I this has been like I've been tracking this guy on social media for a few years, but
Sure.
through very at a like 30,000 foot level. I don't know what he's been dealing with, but I don't think he's been able to like really exercise or certainly not do martial arts for a few years now. With that being said, I don't think he was he certainly wasn't a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? There's a black belt in McMap, but that's like being a fucking...
He was a double red tab. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's something
double red tab.
to that. Like, you have to be tough at least to get that. Like, you don't reach that level in McMap without being at least tough.
Yeah, I agree. I think he was also a like a boxer, was he not? Like, I think he fought semi-professionally.
Maybe, I don't know.
Before the Marine Corps. Yeah, I think so.
Nice.
Could be wrong.
What is
Smith, if you're watching?
What's semi-professional boxing though? Is that like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, or is that Kimbo Slice in the backyard? What's semi-professional boxing?
No, so you know how at most YMCA's they have an upstairs and a downstairs fight club?
Yes.
It's the downstairs fight club.
Word.
Yeah.
Unrelated to anything we've talked about so far, in March, if you're interested in coming out to visit, let me know. I'll get you some dates so my buddy John, who I do most of my lobster fishing with.
We going bugging?
We're going bugging, baby. Lobster season ends, I think, March 22nd. So if you come out here to visit, John's going to be here because him and his wife are taking a trip for their 30th anniversary, but they're flying out of L.A. They're going to come here maybe 3 or 4 days before they have to go to L.A., and we're going to do some bugging during that time. And it's while Stephanie's going to be on her road trip. So it'll be like kind of in the middle of that, or towards the beginning of that 2 weeks that she's gone. So if obviously you don't have to come out here, but if you do come out here, you should, we should try to make it work out to where you could go bugging with us. I think you'd have a lot of fun. I know you'd have a lot of fun doing it. And then you should definitely bring like your microphone and your camera and that kind of stuff so that we could try to do this in person.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be super cool.
So Chinese.
One would even argue we wouldn't need 2 cameras and 2 microphones, eh?
We'd still
Maybe 2 mics.
2 mics, definitely. And if we did the 2 cameras, it would still probably be cool. And we could cut back and forth from different camera angles, maybe. I don't know. But we'll see.
Sure.
So Chinese spy balloons, totally last week, this week, UFOs. Have you heard anything about... I think I've seen, and once again, I've done zero research, but I keep logging on, or I keep going on to Twitter, and I'm seeing like so many posts. I don't follow a single like UFO person on Twitter. Actually, the Twitter account I'm seeing all of this on, I don't follow a single person. I try to keep it like completely. I don't want the algorithm being like, yo, I got your number. I just want to see what the typical super lower class American sees whenever they go on Twitter. And all I'm seeing is UFOs this week, man. And I go on Twitter and it's like a 4th UFO shot down over Alaska. It's like and then a ton of people are saying that the whole reason all of this UFO stuff is on Twitter and why the media is covering the UFOs is because they want to divert all of the attention, or as much of the attention as possible, away from what's going on in Ohio with the chemical train that was derailed and then burned. So
I could just imagine
what you got?
that guy from South Carolina. He hears about UFOs being shot down. He's like,
bro,
backing up his wife and kids.
He's racking up
We're going
some
to Alaska.
He's racking up some frequent flyer miles. I don't think it was just in Alaska. I'm not sure where all it was. I wonder if I could find it. I'm not even going to bother. I should have tried to pull it up beforehand.
So I don't pay attention to the lower half of Twitter. So yeah, I haven't heard anything about this, but I did listen to a Terrence McKenna podcast this last week where he was talking about UFOs, but his experience was after 5 dried grams of psilocybin based mushrooms. So, that's as much as I know. So Alaska, and then where else?
I don't remember where else. I think one was over China. I could be totally wrong. I think one was over China. Presumably, these are American journalists in China reporting on this. Because
that would be funny if it was a higher being that was like watching this, like the Chinese balloon. They're like, we got you. But what?
Yeah, I don't know. All I'm saying
Is it real?
I think it's real. I think it's real this time. I think
what, the propaganda, the sightings by people who have typically no education of a shot down UFO. What parts are real? The actual UFO?
Here's what I think is real.
Sounds aggressive, but I just want to know.
I think. So let's take a step back, right? I'm just a man, Josh. I have very limited knowledge of what's going on outside of my physical body, right? This little cage that I'm in, and I have even less knowledge of what's going on inside of it. But one thing I feel like I've really got honed in, one thing I feel like if you're like, hey, what's Marc really got figured out? I would speak on behalf of Marc, and I would be like, that guy knows the truth about UFOs. And the truth is, odds are one of them was not shot down over China last week, and we're being fed some bullcrap. It just so happens to be the same week that the World Economic Forum takes place, and your boy Bill Gates is dabbing it up with Klaus Schwab in the Swiss Alps right now.
With his spiky little collar and his looks like a priest outfit.
It seems like if you go to Twitter right now, the world is on fire. Bill Gates is dabbing it up with supervillains. UFOs are getting shot down left and right. Jalen Hurts gets steamrolled in the second half of the Super Bowl. It's everything's falling apart. What's his name? Sam Smith is dancing with his nipples out at the Grammys. That didn't actually happen. He was wearing a devil outfit at the Grammys.
What?
It's like there's so much. The Nord Stream pipeline controversy, the train derailed in Ohio.
Now I can. I'm gonna pause you. I'm gonna slow you down. This is like a slow section. I know something about that because that's only about an hour away. So, my mom called me and she's like, be careful if you go outside if you feel any symptoms, because apparently there was a bunch of very toxic gases that were spilled by that, and they evacuated a bunch of homes. Like as of this morning, 180 homes were still under investigation to be tested for this, and I think 2 or 3 fish died, and that was a big deal for Ohio.
That's all their fish.
But yeah, that's real. Now that's a real story. I didn't see it, but that's as much as I'm just trying to catch in where I can relate to something. I don't know shit about Sam Smith.
So the controversy, best I know, around this train derailment is that supposedly I don't watch Fox, CNN, or any MSNBC, CBS. That's a news network?
CVS.
No, that's where I get my freaking prescription strength children's NyQuil. I think the controversy is around media not covering the train derailment, like major media sources, and that, like, anytime something big happens and the mainstream media doesn't touch it, it sends the conspiracy theorist. They just they gently back away from their monitors, and they crush up some Adderall, and they snort it, and then they sprint back to their computers, and they just go crazy. And
It's gonna be a long weekend.
I think there's been like 2 or 3 other trains that have been derailed in the last week. I don't think they've been carrying the same sort of toxic chemicals that one was carrying. So people are just, there's a wildfire brewing in the U.S. of A. because we got all these tank engines, Thomas the Train, falling off his track. And this, like, supposedly, I've never heard, I've heard of trains derailing, obviously. I can't remember the last time I heard someone say a train has been derailed, like, somewhere in the country, and to have it happen supposedly 2 or 3 times in the same week. I don't know, man. Smells like UFOs to me.
Yeah, that is weird. I don't know. I'm looking here now. I see multiple. Yeah, I thought it was just the one, but there was one on the 13th. That was the 13th. It was yesterday. There was one on the 6th as well. That is crazy.
So a lot of people,
It's got to be UFOs, right?
people are saying,
Can't be faulty tracks.
some people are claiming it's domestic terrorism. Some people are saying it's so.
Disgruntled train conductors. Others say no one's to blame.
I think one major point or a sticking point for the more conspiracy minded is that where this took place in Ohio was in, like, so there's this, before I say this, there's this,
I bet it was a low educated area. I'll tell you that.
there's this theme.
It's a correlation. I'm going to get a whiteboard. I'm going to start drawing correlations. Yeah, UFO in the hills of Kentucky. See, no books. And then it's going to be Ohio. See, no books. And then
It's gonna be a matrix. It was like, the less books there are in a county, the more UFO sightings.
start predicting where the next UFO crash is going to be
Yeah,
at.
just based off how well the local library is funded.
UFO hits train, Vermont, northern Vermont.
I think there's this underlying theme in the current conspiracy environment that, like, there's this agenda to degrade the American food chain. So, like, last year and the year before, or during the lockdowns, there were all of these, like, industrial farms or industrial food plants that caught on fire were burned down like all over the country, but like pretty
Yep, I remember hearing
consistently
about
for like
that,
6
yeah.
months. And then you've got, very dubious characters like Bill Gates buying 120% of the farmland in America. And then you've got something like this where a train with toxic chemicals is derailed in Ohio and they decide to set it all on fire. They're doing a controlled burn, and it's in this like super rural area that's in the center of a much greater rural area where there's a lot of farmland. And so this just feeds into that conspiratorial theme of degrading the food supply infrastructure here in the U.S. And I'm almost certain it's UFOs.
So do we know? Well, it says it causes liver damage. So, do we know?
I don't even know what the
how
chemical
much
is. That's
yeah,
how
I
invested
saw
I
a
am.
listing of it. It's a bunch of long words. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Do we know though how much of that rural area is farming?
No. And if I had to guess, probably
No.
0.1%. But
Yeah. No, but I get
makes
it.
for
It
a good
fits.
story.
It fits, and that's what matters.
Oh, yeah. And Bill Gates just happens to be at the World Economic Forum while his farmland is burning back home. Yeah, likely.
Yep.
Likely story, Bill.
And this year is going to be another anniversary of the JFK assassination too, which I'm not saying is a coincidence, but
What is it? Is it a big anniversary? Is it a decade anniversary, or are we just talking one more year?
I think it's just another year, yeah, one more year. But to Bill Hicks' point, and I'm going to keep this going until I die. It didn't happen that long ago. We should still be talking about why it was so wrong. So yeah. I feel confident in that statement too. I'll let it sit there. There's nothing else to really say on that point, I don't think.
Let's talk about quietism.
So I was reading, I don't have it here. It was a book. It was a very short book that Alan Watts transcribed.
No, how did he? Was it
and-
originally written in English, and then he did 5 grams of psilocybin? No, that's Terrence McKenna.
Yeah.
And then he rewrote it.
Yeah.
I'd read that.
And then it shows you really understand it if you could translate it back to the original point afterwards.
That's enlightenment.
That would be a good test in our education system. Like, you have to learn something and then be high as hell on psilocybin and then repeat what you learn. And if you don't, retake in that
That's
class.
the exact direction the American university system is headed.
It would honestly be refreshing, because now where they're going is terrible. So the point of the book, it was actually written by Dionysius, the Areopagite. I'm probably butchering that. I'm sure I am, but he was a monk. He was like a long time ago. He was a monk, and he basically talked about the nature of God in positives and then the nature of God in negatives. And the book, it's split up into different books, but the book that I read was about the negatives. And so it was talking about the nature of God in terms of what God isn't, right? So he is above gender. He is above conceptions of sexuality. He is above the absence of the conceptions of sexuality. So he's truly like, and it goes into this very compacted, detailed, high-level view of what God is not. And the notes that Alan Watts made in this book, and it was about quietism, is it's not quietism. Like, looking and trusting in that being that is above all of your conceptions is not just quietism. It is a part of a bigger dynamic in which actually exists. Whereas quietism, it seems like, is this pointing towards a final total space that there is no action. There is no object. There is no anything. And it's basically just all illusion. So I thought that was interesting. I've never heard the term quietism before reading that book. I am familiar with the idea of it. But I think I'm more familiar from the terms of Taoism, or that the oneness, and that's completeness. But that's not exactly what quietism is. So I thought it was interesting. Have you ever read about anything like that, or you have any thoughts on how that might be connected to the UFO thing in Ohio?
I am almost certain that UFOs are super quiet. I don't even think they have mouths. And I'm pretty sure their aircraft
listen, there's one right there.
bend.
Did you hear
I
it?
think they bend sound waves around the aircraft. So I wouldn't be surprised if UFOs were the founders of quietism. I don't.
Probably a monk driving that bitch.
I don't. I don't know really anything about quietism. I think the only time I've ever even heard it referenced was in
a library under whispered tones.
Was in some I don't know if it.
If you say South Carolina, I'm gonna lose it.
You hear that? That
Yeah.
was me practicing quietism. The only time I think I've ever heard it referenced was in a maybe a sermon, or maybe like a university lecture or something, where they were talking about the concept of the believer in Christianity being not of this world, which is like it's a very sort of, I guess, cliche thing to say today, especially when you're driving on the road and there's this fucking Chevy Suburban on 34s with a 6-inch lift kit in front of you, and they've got that NOTW sticker with a cross on the back of their, and it looks like they should literally peel it off of their rear windshield and put it on like an Affliction t-shirt. I don't like, just because of that brand, I don't even like using the phrase "not of this world," but that idea that this earthly human existence is like a pitiful reflection of our actual home in the kingdom of heaven, and that inspires in some believers a degree of hands-offness, I guess, when it comes to certain things like politics. I think that's the only time I've heard anyone mention quietism. I think it, and they didn't even really define it. I just remember hearing the word for the first time. And the idea was that there are some, I don't know if they would be like Christian, I don't know, maybe just theologians in general who think that the believer ought to remain mute and immune to certain political activities and economic activities and things like that. But that's all I got. Yeah.
Well, if you want to find out more about how the church is not handling UFOs, tune in next week. We're at 33. Want to wrap it here?
Yeah, that's a wrap.